Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
For a minute there, I didn't think it was an echo. We got a mic coming in for, he normally delivers a couple of mics, but apparently they're not here. I thought he usually does a pretty good job, the same guy delivering the stuff on a repetitive basis. Anyway, welcome to the IBM lecture series. We're a few minutes late. I don't normally like to do that, but I might like to stay right on time when I say it's going to be 3 o'clock when we start. So for the next hour or so, Rich is going to be our speaker.
Yes.
And he's going to talk to you about his skills. Most all of you have seen the overview of his accomplishments and how long he's been diving. Are there any other divers in here? Wow, I'm surprised.
I'm still going to lie.
That's really surprising. I'm serious. For this, I'm not saying it in a pejorative way, but I'm saying for a group like this, I'm very surprised to see that many divers. I too am a diver. I've got my night certification. I haven't done it in a while, only because I started doing airplanes and that was dangerous enough. And I said, well, there's no need attempting it up at that end and way down at the other end. So I dive trips. Mostly offshore here, and some to the Bahamas, but no international stuff like he's going to talk about today. We really appreciate you responding so quickly. We had to get Rich to organize his schedule to accommodate us. We were a little late to the party in coming in for picking the speakers. However, we scrambled, got that all done, and Rich was kind enough to accommodate us. For those of you who know or don't know me, apparently I've had a relapse of some kind, where I now have an infection low grade, whether it's virus or bacterial. Nobody seems to know. The doctors don't for about the past 3 weeks. So I've been fighting this. You can't get sick from me, but I can get sick from you. So given what I've been through, I'm really kind of fatigued now. Talking to John, I look a whole lot better 2 months ago than I look now, and that's not really the way it should be going. So we'll see what happens. It's supposed to, but the tests all keep coming back negative. So, they don't know what it is. I have no idea either, other than I feel fine. Okay, given that as a background, Rich indicates that his voice is powerful enough to address everybody. But as soon as we get in, Rich will begin to set up and declare all of the things he needs to. And while the setup is going on, Rich, if you want to use your booming voice to do that, you're more than welcome. So without any further ado, Rich Logisky.
Thank you. No, I'm only kidding. I am getting old for a cold, so Greg and I have been staying away from each other. And I have somewhat of an introduction as to what I do and what I have been doing on the slides, so I'll save most of it for that. I was trying to think how to relate to you folks, being mostly, I guess, IBM retirees. And I know I'm talking to a retirement group every time I come in, and there's no choice between decaf and regular. Decaf and hot water. Thanks for having me. I enjoy talking to groups such as this all around the country and sharing with them some of the things that I've been doing over the last 20 or 30 years. I have a whole series of topics to talk about. I picked one of the latest for you folks today. Should run an hour to an hour and a quarter. Keep everybody looking at the clock. Please feel free to interrupt me at any time if I happen to say something incorrectly or if I say something you don't understand. I try and gear these presentations to the group that I'm presenting to, which can range anywhere between marine biologists, very avid adventure divers, and folks who know nothing about the underwater world. So what you're looking at is about 1,000 slides today. Calm down. Most of them are masked, so run about an hour to an hour and a quarter. But I have a PowerPoint show that I set up for everyone, and then mask out the ones that wouldn't pertain to a certain group. Like, I know you're not interested in the 30 pictures of lunch and dinner that we had on the boat. I do one just in case. All right, how are we doing with this? Okay. Is this any better?
Yeah. Excuse me, Rich, while you're in the middle of that, is this better for the viewing or is
Dark up front.
Yes.
This?
Yeah. This way I can keep an eye on them. See who's sleeping.
If you want it the other way, there's a switch.
Okay, that's. Okay, so that's basically what I do now. I'm also retired, 35 years in public ed, up in Connecticut, and 34 years in Homeland Security, again, up in Connecticut. And my third career, which kind of runs simultaneously with that, is traveling around the world. I have been sponsored the last decade or so by a company in California who foots the tab on some of these trips, sends me where I love to go, puts together $10,000 to $12,000 specialized trips for a handful of people. I come along for the ride and maintain possession of the pictures, ownership of the pictures. It's a good deal. And then I get all sorts of pictures to show folks like you. So, trying to relate to you in some way, when I started teaching business in 1969, we were teaching IBM equipment, the punch card machine, the sword. Some of you go, oh, yeah. All of those, including wiring the boards and everything else, that's what we taught at the time. Then we went to heaven with the Commodore 64 and the Trash 80s, and thought we went to heaven when we replaced our manual typing room with 30 Selectric typewriters from IBM. That was it. It couldn't get any better than that, and it didn't. So what I have for you today is a combined 3-show program that I did for a convention in New Jersey called Beneath the Sea. They are the largest underwater and photography exposition in North America. I've been invited to present some of my findings to them 10 times over the years. And we did these 3 shows for them, and then I combined it to make an hour and a quarter show for you folks. And pardon a little bit of keystoning that we have here. We just didn't solve that. I think most of you can deal with it. Today we're going to a UNESCO World Heritage Site. UNESCO. Cheat sheet. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. I think many of you know some of them, some of the spots in the US and abroad that UNESCO has chosen to preserve as a World Heritage Site. This one being rather unique because it's on the water. It's a very special place to go in the world because it's been unaffected by us. So some of you who are divers and are tired of sifting through the trash that you find on the bottom, that's where you have to go, unfortunately, these days to get pristine conditions. No runoff, no fertilizers, no rivers, no dumping, no blasting to fish, no cyanide fishing, all regulated by the Philippine government, which I'll show you a little bit of or mention to you as we go along. And it's pronounced Tugataha Reef. The third one down is Malapascua Island, also in the Philippines. And that was an add-on that turned out to be just as good for different reasons as Tugataha. and you'll see why in a minute. So a little bit of background. I know most of you would like to be here today. That's South Beach and Boca. But here we are, so we got to make the best of it. Yeah, this is one of those, oh my gods. I do these crazy things, including diving. This was on, where do you think? What are we looking at? Yes, it's a Komodo dragon and not in a zoo. This is on Komodo Island in Indonesia. We stopped our diving for a half a day and went ashore and were greeted by these behemoths. I do crazy things like make love to large animals. And this is not a stuffed one, at least the one on the left. This went around the country in the Weekly Reader. Remember that? Because I was a teacher at the time, I think. And people look at that and say, you're crazy, but I always tell them, you don't know what the alternative was. The alternative choice was he walks over you. So I'm pretty smart. Now, at these conventions, I get to hobnob with people like Richie Kohler and John Chatterton. They wrote the bestseller Shadow Divers. They are the ones who discovered the final clue as to the sinking of the Titanic. There's another book out last year about John Chatterton, who finally, after years of research and searching, found a real pirate ship from the 1700s. So, and also they've done Deep Sea Detectives, if you caught that show on television. That's his son, Jean-Michel Cousteau. He's usually at this convention. And then around in different places, I do art exhibits. A lot of my photography is not art worthy, it's research worthy, because I'm always hunting for the most dangerous, the unique, and the undiscovered. But I do have a series of pictures that I framed into very large prints and show in galleries around and just sell privately, not on a website or anything. And I'm trying to remember if this was Sugar Sand Park a couple of years ago or a library. So I was here at one time for a month or two. This is down at Nova University, Nova Southwest, where they had an exhibit this past year. Mine up on the wall there were up for a year, which was quite interesting to do. And this is Beneath the Sea itself. This is the promotion for it. It's in New Jersey every year. I'm not sure exactly why, but that's where it's held. And as I said, I've been invited there to present 10 times. And done some very unique things for them over the years that haven't been done before and haven't been replicated since. I started diving at an early age. Drove my mother crazy. Eventually I graduated. And then, as some of the divers can probably relate, there's a big difference between this and this. Suddenly you don't have sides, and you don't have a bottom. The bottom might be 1,000 or 2,000 feet below your legs. So I don't see anything wrong with strapping on 70 pounds of equipment at this point and jumping off a perfectly good boat. But many people get nervous at just the thought of it. So I'll leave you with that. Also trying to relate to some of you being ex-IBMers. I know this is lame, but I found a fish once. And now you know why I'm a photographer and not an artist, a sketch artist. And if you don't recognize the background, I did it on that. So that you must recognize. All right, any preliminary questions before I put some people to sleep if I haven't already? All right, can you hear me okay? All right, let's get going. This particular trip started from Central Connecticut. because I was up there when I was scheduled to go. So we went, wonderful, we don't have motion. Isn't that lovely? All right, well, we'll make do. Windsor Matson, Connecticut took me to Chicago, and from Chicago, we took the fast train. This is not going to work. All the way to Hong Kong, and walked from Hong Kong to Manila. This is the largest shopping mall in the world, ladies. I spent a day and a half in Manila. I always like to decompress a little bit before a big expedition because it lets you catch up a little bit with time zones and also lets your luggage catch up to you in case it hasn't come with you. When you step on a boat and go out for an entire week and you don't have your dive equipment, you might as well stay in the airport or just go home, or your photography equipment. And I know divers who have made trips such as this and no equipment. So we always allow extra time. At the small airport, this is basically what a diver would travel with, 2 or 3 bags such as this, one of them being dive equipment, or 2, and then 1 being photography equipment. Then we went from Manila to part of our final destination, Puerto Princesa on Palawan Island. Now, this was a little risky at the time, according to a letter I had just received from the State Department, and I always register with them for my trips, saying, unless you had urgent business, don't go there. It was one of those, and apparently the problems have continued. I just got another letter maybe a week ago saying the same thing. There are rebels in this part of the world, in the ocean, the Sulu Sea, and the archipelagos nearby. So it's not the safest place to go in the world. And what I said in my book that some of you might have read was, it was Captain Phillips all over again. You'd look at the horizon every day and night wondering what was tracking us out there, because you are really out there. This is the island of Palawan. It's one of hundreds in the Philippines. Puerto Princesa is the port we take the boat out of. And we go out into the Sulu Sea, quite a distance, away from any medical help, any assistance of any kind. So you are out there and basically alone. This is our dive boat, a dedicated, built for diving dive boat. We lived on it for a week. The only difference in this shot is that we arrived about 9 o'clock at night. This shot was taken when we came back. I just was so tired by then, I didn't have the presence of mind to shoot the night scene. But on the arrival that night, we got read the Riot Act by UNESCO representatives who met us at the boat, sat us down, told us what we were allowed to do and what we were absolutely not allowed to do on this kind of trip. So they are very, very protective of this jewel in the Sulu Sea. The boat doesn't look like much probably at the pier, but out on the ocean, it's home. It's a nicely accommodated vessel. It only goes to Tugataha 2 months of the year, because all the other months you're looking at high winds and 15-foot seas. And I don't like to look at those because I get seasick. 30 years of diving has not helped. I get violently seasick sometimes when I see it on television.
How many divers can that handle?
Can handle about 16 comfortably, and a crew of about 6 that have multiple functions. Good question. Everything is done on the ship, including the manufacture of our mixed gases. This was mostly a mixed gas trip to give us more bottom time and safety because if you fall into decompression sickness out here, there is no quick fix.
SOL.
DD, different day. Okay. So they're very cautious. They would like everybody to be on the mixture called nitrox, which is 32% pure oxygen compared to about 18%. The problem is it limits your depth to about 110 feet. In case you want to go below 110 feet in the middle of nowhere, you should be doing it on straight air compressed rather than mixed gas. So where did we go? Well, there's Alumni Island, and we went right there. And the rebels are all along there. The Philippines is a funny place. The upper half of the Philippines is mostly Christian and mostly safe, relatively speaking. The bottom half is mostly Muslim, and that's a big generalization, but that's what we find in general. So we were going out into the heart of it, and this slide is not
We
played.
have just set anchor at Tubataha Reef System after traveling 13 hours overnight and find that it is glass.
I'm gonna-
joke is
I'm going to move it along because that's a whole panorama that's not playing. It plays on the computer, but I don't know what's wrong with the connection we got here today. Anyway, we'll see how that plays out. This is the deck of the dive boat. As I said to you, it was strictly designed for diving. This is where all the photography gear goes, and secondary supplies for photography go in there. Dive suits get hung up. All the oxygen gets manufactured on the ship. Quite a facility. There's an indoor salon that's air conditioned. Stock of movies, if you get bored, you can stay up long enough, which is pretty rare. And when all the travelers are together, that's about what it looks like. It gets pretty crammed up, and it's all photography equipment. All your dive equipment is somewhere else. They don't want anything wet. We don't want anything wet next to open cameras. But that's, rules are made to be broken in different parts of the world. So the first night we left the port and we just steamed out overnight to Tubataha. We wasted no time that evening right after a quick meal to be briefed as to what the next morning would hold in store. Most of the dives, in fact, all of the dive days were 5 dives a day, last one being at night. So you're looking at approximately 5 hours underwater a day for 5.5 days straight. The problem with that, and the divers here understand it, is that nitrogen is cumulative. The second dive affects the first dive. The fifth dive is affected by all the others before it. So if you've already made 4 dives that day and then you jump in for a night dive, it's almost like you've already been in the water 20 to 25 minutes in your calculations for how close you are to the bends, okay? I don't want to get too technical about it, but that's what it boils down to. So picture making 27 or 28 dives in 5.5 days. There are 2 atolls, at least at low tide, but most of it is underwater. The South Atoll and the North Atoll, both beautiful locations for diving. Now, to get technical to a degree so you can appreciate some of the pictures better, I always use this diagram in my shows so you can somehow understand what the challenges are to underwater photography. here's your camera, and you want to take a picture of a fish. It sounds simple, but the complication, one of the complications is the strobe. Because the fish you're taking a picture of looks like it's here, but it's here. Let me say that again. Everything you see underwater is approximately 25% closer appearing than it really is. Sounds like your side rearview mirror. So you've got to take that into account when you're shooting. Otherwise, you're lighting up nothing. You wind up with a dark image. So it's kind of counterintuitive to point your light away from your subject, behind your subject to some degree, and how much is a crapshoot, basically, the experience. The other problem is this: all ocean water has particulates in it. And those of you who have tried to take underwater pictures with a built-in strobe, what you've done is lit up the particulates in the water as you're taking a picture of the subject. So it almost mandates having an outboard strobe that is going to be pointed further away than what you're looking at. So things get complicated real quick. Questions on that?
How does that work with movies? How does that work with motion?
Same. It's not a problem with the camera. That's a good question. Whether it's a still camera or a movie camera, it's not a problem with the camera because the camera is in a housing. It's taking a picture of what it is seeing. Not a problem. Focus and everything. And the same is true with mine, which is a still camera. The other thing to consider is depth. As you go down deeper, your colors become muted and disappear. So, an experienced underwater photographer knows that what he's looking at is brown, but it's really going to show up red with the strobe light, with the flash. So if you want to shoot red, you go for something that's brown. And all the colors disappear the deeper down you go. They become very muted until you get more or less CN coloration. So let's go on. Nothing extreme about this picture other than the clarity of the water. It's as if it isn't in water. And by the way, I do hunt sharks to photograph. I told you before I'm crazy, so this just parallels that. Sharks are very difficult to photograph usually. Believe it or not, most varieties are skittish. They do not like bubbles. 98% of what's underwater is scared of bubbles, with few exceptions. And I've been with those exceptions. So if you want to shoot a good shark, don't breathe. Just hold your breath. They'll come a little closer. Some sharks, like hammerheads, are so skittish, if they see you, they don't come near you. So I've been in situations holding my breath behind reefs, waiting until they get close enough, and then I just pop up and take one or two before they bolt in another direction. Kind of hard to process, but that's the way it is with most varieties of sharks, and I hope they've read the same books I have. So there were plenty of sharks to pick from on this trip. And they came fairly close. And he's almost out of office, isn't he? I think he's got just the summer to go, one of our crew members. They nicknamed him Obama. I don't know why. So, what you find at Tubataha is almost everything is all gathered there in one form or another. Beautiful corals, what we used to have off of the beaches here in Florida. Go ahead.
Are the fish of Tubataha larger than, say, a reef fish here in Sarah?
Oh, the question is about the size differential out there. Not that I noticed. The sizes were about the same as I would have expected. Good question. So even though the environment is healthier, what changes is the amount of fish. If anybody here been to Africa? Yeah. Remember the first day? Oh, look, a zebra. Oh, look, a water buffalo. Oh, you know. And then by the second or third day, you have to wait. Get these animals out of the way. I want to take a picture of a cheetah. There are so many schools and teams of fish going around these two atolls that it's unbelievable. Sometimes you have to wait to take a shot. Now there's two that are very close. This is a Moorish idol, otherwise known as a one of those. Very large sea clams. Now this is the kind you used to see in sea hunt, and then grab Lloyd Bridges' leg and so on. Now one of the days we were out, we came across a dead shark. It had already turned white. It was looking bloated. And I started moving in because I thought it was a rare opportunity to shoot body parts. Usually you can't get this close to sharks. So I moved in and I started shooting the gills, and everyone else was behind me by about 20 or 30 feet. The gills started moving. He was sleeping, he wasn't dead. And next thing I knew, he went under my legs and then off into the blue. Surprise, surprise. Besides the big guys, there are small guys. You're looking at a very tiny fish, a blenny or a goby, on a bigger head of coral. So you're looking at a very small piece of coral here. You'll see a larger shot in a minute. The colorations of the fish sometimes were more brilliant than I've seen locally. Some of them were almost iridescent. And what I have seen through Indonesia and Malaysia and the Philippines are schools of fish that form tornadoes. Over 100 feet to the surface, moving at a relatively slow rate, just swirling around, speculatively both for protection and mating purposes. But it is an amazing thing to watch these swirls, and sometimes they know not to come near you until you're almost out of air, and you can't follow them. And we've had situations where that has happened. My wife in the back has been dove with me for many years, and she consumes much less air than I do. So when I see something like this, my first thing to do is look at my gauges, look at my computer, figure out how many minutes I have left. Usually it's 5. And then my second thing is I go over to her and I look at her computer and it says 20. So I'm good, right? I know I can suck my tank dry and then piggyback her tank towards a decompression stop on the surface. Not the smartest thing to do, but I've done it many times. Makes good use of your full tanks of air. Now, why follow them? Because they let you inside them. This is a shot from within the tornado. They just part when you approach. They close behind you like an elevator door. And then they start swirling all around and all the way up to the surface. It can be fish like this, like jacks, or it can be barracudas. And I've done it with both. We're talking thousands of barracudas. Thousands.
I think the
They were not the great Atlantic barracudas. I would say they were about 18 to 20 inches. Bony, not necessarily eating. Here you've got a sea cucumber. That's this. And he's crawling along the bottom very slowly, but he's got some company. Critters will go for rides on these things to get from one spot to another. I was lucky enough to have a close-up lens, so when I moved in, I was able to shoot this. That was actually one of the shrimp on its back. And look at the colorations, look at the patterns nature provides. Even where the eye is very special. And the other shot is head on. These are weird boxfish. Did I mention we had sharks? Okay. Then we had 2 sharks and 3 sharks and 5 sharks and so on. I always throw in one of these. Everybody says Nemo.
You always see them in pairs?
More than pairs, yeah. They live in this, these are actually called anemone fish, to be really accurate. These are anemone fish because what they're living in is called an anemone. This is also an animal with poisonous, venomous quills. And they have developed a mucous membrane to be impervious to that, and they make their home within an anemone. And they lay their eggs underneath the anemone. So it's a nice relationship they have. What makes it a clownfish is the fact, I don't know if some of you in the back can see it, there's a slight black outline of the white. So the orange anemone fish that has the white band, but the white band that is outlined by the black line is a clownfish. The others are not.
Are they limited to the Pacific?
Let me think about that. I haven't seen them in the Caribbean. But you do see them on the t-shirts that they sell on every island in the Caribbean. So I'd say more in the Indo-Pacific rather than beyond. This is a Napoleon wrasse. He can go about 400 pounds. Big guy. Unicorn. Underneath my feet one day, this is not the best shot, but a spotted eagle ray just swimming along, could care less about us. And then I looked up, and there were 2 more sharks. Just an amazing variety of everything I had found in different parts of the world. My dive buddy did me a favor here and there and shot me in my office. I like to have an office that's like that. And by the way, when you do underwater photography, you've got to have a complete mastery of buoyancy. If you haven't learned how to control where you are in the water column, you can't shoot photography. This is not like standing on terra firma where, oh, I've got to get a little bit down more on the frame and you do this. Because there is no that. Once you reach equilibrium, your framing is done with your lungs. Slight inhale, slight exhale, and that's how you frame your shot. While you're holding your breath. That's it. A lot of things are afraid of you. Look at the brilliant colors here. Now, we did step foot on land. I'll get it. This is the Coast Guard station. It's the only actual piece of land above water in this entire Sulu Sea area. And there are about 6 Coast Guard people in that shack with a speedboat. They monitor the area as best they can. We couldn't get out of them whether it was a punishment assignment or whether it was a reward. I guess you could go either way if you consider the temperature was about 110. So that was the only time during the entire week that we could put our feet on the ground, and that's where they lived. Back in the office, we've got cuttlefish. These guys are about the size of a big dinner plate, and they're in the octopus family. These are tentacles, just like an octopus, all in front, used for different purposes, mating, feeding, defense, and so on. But it's definitely in the octopus family, and I want to show you another one shortly that will be completely amazing. But remember, this guy is the size of a large dinner plate, and he changes colors, just like an octopus would. There are weird things that have happened in the Indo-Pacific area. One of which is frogfish have developed legs. Their fins have been replaced by kind of elbowy legs on either side, and they walk the bottom. So I don't think Darwin got to see anything like that. But they are prevalent. Frogfish and so on have these legs that they walk on.
Radiation?
Radiation? I don't think so. Never thought about it. Then there were a few catfish. I mentioned to you going diving at night. This is the scene. You head out just before the sun goes down, so you can get on site and get oriented before you go down. So this is about the only thing that's more stupid than diving off a good boat during the day. And the reason you do it is because a lot of fish become nocturnal. They come out at night, and we've never seen them during the day. Again, some very weird specimens. Most of the diving that we did was very detailed, very brief, very outlined, leaving as little to chance as possible. So when you're ready for a dive, you go and gather near the dive platform, and you will see this: the name of the dive, site, the maximum depth, maximum dive time, what the procedure is going to be for lost body, safety stop 3 minutes at 15 feet. Low on air is considered 750 PSI or 50 bar. And then you've got all the details about the water at that particular time. And we spent days going around these sites. Then you get a photography briefing as well. You're going to see big stuff, have a wide angle lens. You're going to see small stuff, have a macro lens. Very hard to change underwater. Gotta be fast. So you want to know before you go in what you're going to be up against. Many of you might not have seen a hermit crab out, but if you hang near the shell and don't move and don't think the territory is the success and the speed you're going is the success, and just stay in one place, things come out like that. Most of the time, if our tanks were in one of the Zodiacs, they would pile the fins and everything else on top because the sun would be brutal on the expanding air in the tank. I told you I was going to give you one food shot. That's it. These are nudibranchs. Nudibranch means naked shell. And you will find a few varieties in the Caribbean, that's about it. That's the gill. So there is no shell on the nudibranch. Yeah, it is beautiful, and many of them are colored extremely oddly so that the potential predator knows it's poisonous and doesn't taste good, and it should be left alone. These are about the size of, well, we'll call it an inch. Very small critters.
Which breed that type of
He doesn't know. Here's the sensors in the front, the mouth, and so on.
If it had a shell, what would it be akin to that we might,
Snail?
a snail?
I'll show you another one in a minute. You'll know why in a second. I guess this is called a zebra lionfish. And this is another nudibranch. There's the gill outside the body. I mentioned to you before that little shrimp was living on a piece of coral. It's not uncommon to see coral heads this size, the tubataha. It's becoming rarer in different parts of the world, but the reefs were probably in the best shape I've ever seen. Now that's a close-up shot of one of those anemones again, but instead of finding a clownfish inside, you can find different other things that are hiding in there, making it home. White-tip reef shark and whale shark. This is, you're looking at a small school bus. They are big. Going the other direction, we were able to find pygmy seahorse. Now, I've shot these many times, but only in that part of the world. They weren't discovered until somebody brought a sea fan out of the water for their home salt aquarium. And one day he was looking at the water and saw this thing swimming in there, a quarter the size of his pinky nail. It's one of the smallest, it is the smallest seahorse. The neat thing about it is it also changes color to its environment and develops the characteristics of its environment. So they're very, very hard to spot. I always rely on an experienced guide to bring me in and then keep a pointer there until I can search and find the pointer with my viewfinder, and then go to the tip of the pointer and then let him know. Moves the pointer away, I take the shot. Very hard to find. So after doing this for a week, we all got a formal listing of all of our dives for that week in detail, sent by email to all of our boxes. And then we watched the sunset on Tubataha for the last time. We flew back to Palawan, and this is the executive lounge. I was able to acquire the executive lounge for the 10 of us. They all either went to another resort in the Philippines or home, depending on their obligations. Most of them own dive shops and travel agencies and so on. And they had to leave. And there I was, sitting there, because I had something else in mind. When Liv and I were in the Philippines a few years before, we had been told that there was a special kind of shark that had been spotted off of one of the main islands in the Philippines. But you had to get up before dawn and be on site before dawn and take your chances in viewing it. So that's not worth a week in and of its own. But I broke the ticket at this point, and went on my own to the other island. And that became an adventure in and of itself. We went from Puerto Princesa to Cebu. This is the main island in the Philippines, Cebu City. It is 4 hours along a mountainous road to get to the tip of Cebu, to catch a ferry to get to this other island. I mean, we were out there. We were on the edge. Not we anymore, me. So I called a taxi, took the 4-hour mountainous ride to the tip of Cebu, and I'm looking and I don't see a ferry. And nobody is speaking English. And eventually they made me understand it was low tide. The tide is usually up to here. And we're looking at slimy, slippery rocks here. So we got porters to get down all my equipment into this little boat, and we pulled out and pulled and pulled, and I'm still not seeing the ferry. There was no ferry. It was just a slightly larger motorized boat that was going to take me to this other lodge. We understand the ferry is taking cars. I'm stupid. I was asking the driver, is your taxi going on the ferry? Or do I have to catch another one when we get to the other side? And I got a blank look, and I found out later why, because we weren't taking any cars. So it was another, I would say, an hour and a half. By now it's dark. Here's the tip of Cebu. We crossed over to the area of opposite exotic island dive resort, right here. And then had to switch to another lighter boat so they could pull their way into shore with my equipment. Now it's 10 o'clock at night. Time for dinner. Sir, would you like to go diving in the morning? Well, let's see now. I've got 4 chances to see this special shark. Got to be up at 4:30 in the morning, on site before sunrise, and down 75 to 80 feet. And then just stay there and see what happens. The shark is called a thresher shark. There are 3 different varieties around the world, but this is the only place that was rumored to have thresher sharks on a regular basis. They come up from 2,000 feet down to feed and be cleaned at sunrise. And then they're gone again the rest of the day. So, one of my chances of seeing that thresher was about 6 hours from dinner. We set up all the diving equipment. I went to the room. I filled out all the usual sign your life away papers. And then I had to assemble my camera equipment all over again, which I had to clean and lubricate and get stored for the plane. So all of that had to be put back together again if I was diving at 4:30 in the morning. But if that was going to be the only sighting of why I was there for 4 or 5 days, that had to be the case. And I sleep later. That's what we did. So at 4:45, we headed off to Manado Shoal. And I spent a few hours in bed with my mate, assembling the camera, a couple of hours of sleep. We went out at dark, maybe a half hour from the lodge, and got to this rope. Time to have fun. So you head down this rope into the abyss, knowing that you're on a remote island that's from a remote island that's near another remote island and so on. In the hope of seeing a thresher shark. This guy's got to be nuts. My computer was saying I was down 73 feet. I took a picture of the computer because I had nothing else to take a picture of. This is not clear water, it's not beautiful reefs or anything like that. So I was down 73 feet. I had 19 minutes left, what's called no death time, no decompression time. I had 19 minutes left to stay down, even though I had 47 minutes of air left. I was down 15 minutes. So things were getting tight, and I figured I blew that first day, but it was worth a shot. And probably about 5 minutes after I took this shot, out of the murk that I was staring at was a tail that disappeared back into the murk. And I thought, well, if that was it, I got to get a picture of that. It's not going to happen. And then he came back. What makes this shark the most unique that I have ever seen is a Walt Disney face and a tail almost the size of the entire body. It's a very unique shark. You won't be able to see the video today because I see I'm not getting motion, but I had a video of its predatory habits near the end of this. And what it does is go into a bait ball, snap its tail into the bait, stun some fish, turn around and have breakfast. Oh, you would have missed that. And over the course of the next few days, I was able to better my shots and experiment a little more with how to get that precise image. Now, you're shooting without a strobe because in murky water over 10 feet away, strobe is useless anyway. So you have to guess at what your focal points are going to be before you even put the camera together and the housing, because you've lost the ability to autofocus. It's that dark. Just an amazing thing.
How big is he?
About 8 to 9 feet. But non-threatening. And they came in, 7, 8 of them, they came in close, they turned around and swam away. So another one came in close, swam away, and that was the pattern. I got skunked one of the days, and I got lucky all of the others. So I figured my trick was a 100% success story.
Is that 8 feet total, like human tail, or is that 8 feet body?
Till about, I would say here. And that's an approximation, male and female different.
How is there enough light?
Oh, that's a good question. There isn't. You jack up the sensitivity of your camera as best you can. I was shooting at 1000 ISO for people who know photography and hoping for the best. And just about, well, at this shot, this was sunrise on that one. So I had a little bit of ambient light to work with. Well, you haven't seen the other 200.
What kind of sugar is it?
From 60th to a 90th.
It's always moving, so.
Oh yeah, moving fast.
Yeah.
Snapping back and forth, zigzag. Very hard, very difficult assignment. And here's one going into the bait ball, looking for breakfast. So I was pretty pleased getting shots like that. And I figured I could sit on the shore the rest of the day and just sit in the restaurant and beer up and whatever I wanted to do. But after the first day of recovery, I said, well, there are other dives they offer, I might as well try them. And they turned out to be the highlight of this particular trip, besides the thresher sharks. Anyway, we came up from that first dive looking at a rainbow. I knew I had the shots in the can. I was all set. I was sitting pretty. And then looked in the other direction. As the boatman could not start the engine. and the water spouts started forming and coming towards us. Eventually, he got started and we beat them to shore, and then it just poured like crazy. So you never know what you're going to find out there.
I saw a familiar name there, one of the masters was Lacey, and that brings back, reminiscence about the war in the Pacific. Did you write any stuff that was from that time?
Any war remnants? Not on this trip. Other Philippines trips, I have complete shows on the wrecks and the airplanes and everything else, but not on this one. So it was time for breakfast, and looking at what the rest of the dives might be, I went out in the afternoon, found some very interesting critters, and eventually found another cuttlefish. But this guy is 2 inches big. Remember the dinner plate? He's 2 inches full grown. He's called a flamboyant cuttlefish. And that's full grown, and they change colors. That guy is this guy. This guy is this guy. So we really played around. There were urchins of different colors. There's another frogfish, but you gotta look carefully. He was coming off of a sponge. Here's the head, 2 eyes. Here's the foot of the frogfish, and then the other side. Very well camouflaged.
On the previous shot, was that the person's mouth, was it?
Yeah.
So it does say that.
Sea snake? Yes, you see the snake. 8 to 10 footers, sea crates, banded sea crates, extremely deadly, probably second deadliest in the ocean, well, third deadliest. Irukandji box jellyfish are a nightmare, and probably number 2 on the list would be blue-ringed octopus, arguably. Anyway, he let me follow him for about a half an hour. He was going in and out of the rocks, in and out of the corals, looking for lunch. He was having a good old time and could care less that I was within 2 feet of him. They have very small mouths. They have extremely venomous bite, but they save it for what's important, not divers usually. So you respect his territory, he respects yours, and it's not a problem.
It's very shallow.
No, I would say about 50 feet on those dives, 60 feet. But the sun was up.
I was gonna say goodbye.
Yeah. Then I was tempted by this one. This is an evening dive, twilight dive. You go out and it's twilight. By the time you come back, it's pitch dark. There was talk about taking some pictures of mandarin fish. Well, with mandarins, I've shot them before. You lie and roll for a half hour to 45 minutes as it gets pitch dark. They do not come out until it's dark. And they come out to mate, which is a split second. No cigarette. And then they're gone again. And you can't sit there with a light on because they won't come out. So you're just lying on this sharp rubble, looking at the floaters in your eyes, thinking that was a vanderfish, snap, 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 and you're getting nothing. Back in the film days, I'd come back with 36 nothings. This is a mandarin. It's probably the most colorful fish in the ocean, and we're looking at about 4 inches. They're quite something. Oops. See anything on it?
Like 2 of them.
It looks like 2 of them.
Yeah,
because they're mating. Out of the rubble over here. Out of the rubble over here. Gone. Get that in the pitch dark, and you know what you're doing. Yeah. As I say, you haven't seen the other 100. Another nudibranch, a pipefish. There. Here's the head. This is in the seahorse family, but it's not shaped like a seahorse. Then the surprise of all. Golf ball size, a blue-ringed octopus.
Oh.
Never expected it. And those rings light up when you irritate it. And that's unfortunately what the guide was doing with his pointer. We're looking at something the size of a golf ball that would kill you if you were extremely sensitive to the bite. You'd be dead before you got to the shore. It's a terrible bite. They experience it a lot in Australia, and they're geared up for Australia to deal with it. So that was a neat shot. That was something totally unexpected. I had shot a two-ringed octopus in Malaysia that turned out to be the first time a two-ringed octopus ever got photographed in Malaysia. Never knew it at the time until I got home and posted it. So this was my first encounter with a real blue-ringed octopus. And they can blend in, and they can light up.
But it has to actually bite you.
Yes, yes, they have a beak under there that you want to stay away from, or they just blend in. You see how he's blended into the rubble? That was the rubble we were relying on to shoot the mandarin fish.
Where is it in the dark?
In the dark, didn't know it. Where is it? And I started saying, oh my God, are we back where we started with the mandarins? Yes, we are. Sorry?
Point out the fish.
I do a whole show on what's hidden in plain sight under the water. And it's amazing that people have trouble seeing what I'm looking at, even though they know I'm bullseyeing the shot. I'm putting the shot in the middle of the picture, which gives you an advantage of seeing it. Normally, this picture being out there with a 180-degree view, very difficult. So that was my treasure of Malapascua Island, and I couldn't stop shooting it.
Just the one, or you saw more than one?
More than one, yeah, 2 or 3 actually, over the course of the week, because I went out every night.
Is that the normal size, golf ball sizes are big?
They're really small. The two-ringed octopus that I found in Indonesia was inside the mouth of a 7-Up bottle.
So this one is all riled up. You're trying to warn you away.
Yes, he's really ticked off. And rightly so. He's got 4 or 5 divers snapping lights around him, and yeah. So diving morning, noon, and night on Malapascua Island for 5 days, 4 days, which was preceded by diving the week on the dive boat. I ended up a happy camper, but I got to tell you, it took its toll. What you're looking at today.
How much weight did you lose?
Well, this is what I looked like at the beginning of the trip. Only kidding. This was 30 years ago. Now, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see motion.
As there are and have been sharks swimming around for eons, it's clear that they reproduce, but how various species go about it has in many cases remained an enigma. For what is thought to be the first time, researchers have captured a photograph of an oceanic shark actually giving birth to a live pup. The subject in the picture is a thresher shark, and the image was taken in 2013 in a grouping of underwater mountains near the Philippines. It was recently published in the journal Coral Reefs. Dr. Simon Oliver, the head of the team that was studying the area, said that they were going about their regular explorations when the team's photographer took the photo. Oliver was unaware of the prize find until the film was developed and presented to him at a later time. Those thinking about engaging in some underwater thresher research of their own should be well advised that these sharks are agile and creative hunters. It's common for them to use their ample tail to stun their prey, making it easier to catch.
Sorry I couldn't share that with you in video. So then we made our way back and back and back. My plan was to fly from Cebu City on Cebu all the way back to Hong Kong. There was one jet a day that was doing that. I booked it because there was one plane a day going from Hong Kong to New York. So I made that connection in Hong Kong and flew from Hong Kong. We drove from Hong Kong all the way back to Kennedy Airport. I'm not going to be able to show you that one. I'll tell you a funny story in conclusion. This is a landing at Kennedy Airport at the outer marker point. And every once in a while, I tell the story as this is playing to the audience, how I traveled business and first class. And the privilege of doing that allowed you access to a chamber underneath part of the plane so that you could shoot past the nose gear and photograph the landing. That's just what people did. They said, yeah, wow, that's nonsense. It doesn't happen. This was on the screen, on the personalized screen, but there were people in the audience that wanted to find the secret. I guess I'm just believable, right? If you want to contact me, that's my email address. If you want to do me a favor, Lynn, can you just put those out? I gave a show about a month ago, and every once in a while, more often than not, people want pictures of some of this stuff, particularly the stuff that was in the museums and the art galleries. So I started producing them 8x10s. I forgot to advertise it at the last show, and I'm sitting here with about 40 images that I would love to sell, to put food on my table. I'll give you one of those that she's going to lay out for $5 each. It's an 8x10. And again, it's not to put food on the table, but I want to get rid of them, for crying out loud. I got about $400 invested in printing stock right now that I forgot to sell at the last show. All right, so I took about an hour and a quarter. That wasn't too bad. Any miscellaneous questions? Yes?
Here we have a severe problem with the lionfish.
All the way up the coast.
You mentioned lionfish before. Is that a problem over there?
Yes, lionfish are a problem everywhere. They're up and down the East Coast. They're invasive species. They're ruining the environment underwater. They've had lionfish bake-offs, hunts, different things for lionfish to try and contain them a little bit. And we're making some headway, but you've nailed it. They are terrible.
What are the natural reasons for
Of the lionfish?
Yeah.
We are. Yeah, we would be too, but probably anything larger that could work around the quills, because the quills are venomous too. But that's the problem, you know. It takes just a certain variety of fish that can get past that kind of defense system. It's very hard, and that's why they're proliferating up the coast. By the way, there is a pier near here. Riviera Beach called, yeah, the Blue Heron Bridge. I've been with the author of the book on the Blue Heron Bridge. She's a member of my underwater photo society. It replicates some of what you find in Indonesia and Malaysia and the Philippines, just up the coast from here. It's one of the most unique dive spots in all of Florida at 15 feet of water. You don't know it driving over the bridge, but it's one of the most amazing places on the eastern seaboard to find those species living and thriving right around the pier.
What's the average water temperature would you say?
On this trip, average water temperature was my kind of temperature, about 81. Now, temperature of the water is something to consider when you're diving. To a swimmer, 75 would be very comfortable. But when you take your body and completely immerse it in water for an hour to 5 hours, if your core temp drops just 1 or 2 degrees, which it does, you come up with your teeth chattering. So I like to dive with a 3 mil wetsuit, which compresses at depth to about 1 mil, so it doesn't give you a lot of temperature protection, but it gives you protection against bumping into things, and warmer water when I can get it. So 81 to 83 is very nice. Just very hard to find. And it varies different times of the year, from Tubataha and Malapascua.
Is it very, very much with depth?
It does. Temperature varies with depth.
I know, it's very.
Yes,
Yeah, thermoclines?
you do. You have thermoclines. Not a lot. I didn't experience a lot on this trip. But boy, I've gone through them. Thermoclines are when you see a thermocline in the water, it looks like a silk curtain shimmering in front of you. And as you go through it,